So this is extra practice writing and using equations. This is not in your book, I'm just in my notebook, and you'll see I do have examples already written. So if you need to pause the video at the beginning of each example and then write the example down, and then you can replay it whenever you're ready. So this first one says write the equation and when you have slope of 2 and initial value of 4. So when we're writing these equations, I'm going to look back at your notes. So remember that's y equals mx plus b, where the m always represents the slope or the rate, and the b represents the starting position or initial, that says initials value. It should just be initial value. But I'm going to go ahead and write that here so that it's on the same page. So y equals mx plus b. I'm gonna, on this whole thing, I'm gonna use blue every time I'm talking about initial value, and I'm gonna use pink every time I'm talking about the m. So remember the m, sorry that was probably really loud, my pen just hit the microphone. The m is the slope, and the b is the initial value. So if it says slope of 2, that means the 2 in our equation, or the 2 is going to go into our equation for the slope. So it would be y equals 2 x. Remember the y and the x are always there. That's just talking about the x and y values. And then plus, our initial value says 4. So then we're going to put plus 4. So anytime it says something about slope, or once you find the slope, which we'll be doing in this as well, the slope is 2, so that goes into the equation next to x. That's always important that you remember that the m is next to x. And then the 4 is the initial value. So that's our equation. We're done. Okay, sometimes they will give you an example where there are negatives, or instead of writing out the word, they will just give you the letter, so like m equals. So again, the m is just the number that goes with x, so then it would be y equals, this goes with x, so it'd be, notice it's negative, don't forget that negative, so you'd put minus 1/2. Remember, it always goes with x. Slope always goes with x. And then plus the b, which in this case is -5. So it would technically, or it would kind of be written like this, plus and negative. But I want you to think about this. If your bank is giving you a negative balance, does that mean you're actually adding, or are they taking away money? So don't let the plus and negative mess you up. It's actually just -5. You can write it either way, but you're always going to see it written as -5. So just think of a plus and negative, or -5 means that the b, or the initial value, was a -5. We're not going to actually look at that on the graph yet, but we will in a lesson soon. So then it would be y equals -1/2 x minus 5. So that would actually be what you would see as your final answer. Okay, so let's look at these next examples. So this one's going to go backwards. So it's going to say find the slope and initial value from the equation. So it's just going backwards from this, where we were given the slope and the initial value, then we wrote the equation. Now we're going to go backwards. So again, the slope is always with x. the initial value is always adding or subtracting at the end. So the slope is the number in front of x. Don't give the x, just give the number in front of x. So the slope would just be 3. The initial value, remember, think about this plus a -5 or just -5. So our initial value, they would have started at -5. Okay, let's look at this next one. Notice again, it's the same thing. The m means slope, and it's always the number with x. So our slope in this case would be -1/2. Now, there is nothing adding or subtracting at the end. So if there's nothing adding or subtracting there, what does that mean? Think back to the lessons that we've been doing. If they start at 0, then you don't have to add anything. So we don't have to write +0, but if it's asking initial value or asking where it started, then you would know that you have to say it started at 0. It has to start somewhere. If it doesn't add something at the end, then that means it's starting at 0. And I don't know why I wrote that in black, but I'll write it in blue kind of. So the b value would be 0 because there's nothing adding at the end back there. Okay, so now these next ones are going to be using graphs. So you will probably want to write a sketch of this graph. So if anything, if you're not using graph paper, just draw the x and y axis and do the best you can. Like maybe every line going up on your notebook paper would be the same as mine. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video, make this graph. Notice, just mark these points, and then I just took a piece of paper, the edge of a piece of paper, and drew the line. So mark these points that I have here, and then you can mark what we're doing. So we're going to write the equation still in that same form, y equals mx plus b, where the m is the slope and the b is the initial value. So initial value. In this case, we're actually going to call it the y-intercept. And we will write that definition in just a second. And then again, the m is the slope. Okay, so I'm going to go actually back to this page where we wrote our equations. So right here we have equation of a line. Hopefully you still have some room over here where you did slope, and I want you to write this definition. So y-intercept, which is initial value. But what y-intercept is, or what a y-intercept means, is it's where the line crosses the y-axis. So if we have a graph where it crosses the y-axis, so if it's a line that looks like that, that would be your y-intercept. Because remember that we just talked about it being our initial value. So if time was 0, this is where you started. So remember, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. It's also the initial value. So don't let that mess you up. We will talk more about that in the next few lessons, but for now, just keep in mind it's the initial value. Okay, so I like knowing where I start. So for this first example, I'm going to mark that. So my b is 4. from this graph. You could see that it started or crossed the y-axis at 4. Okay, now let's find the slope. Remember, slope is rise over run, or change of y over change of x. So if we're at 4, and I'm going to have to go up to this point right here. From 4 to 8, how much does that change? So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a change of 4. This is why I like using different colors so that those numbers don't get mixed up. So it went up 4, and then how much does it go over? So here is 0, and it went over to 1. So it went over 1. Let's do it again, and I'm going to show you something. So even if I couldn't really see it on that point, if I go to the next one, if I go from 8 to 12. So think about it, it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's 4. And then it goes over from 1 to 2 is 1. Okay, and I can just keep going. So that's 4 over 1. So 4 over 1, which is just 4. So our equation would be y equals 4x plus 4. And that would be our equation. Notice that first 4 came from the slope, the second 4 came from where it started. All right, let's do this next one. Again, pause your video. Use the lines on your notebook paper and it will find it. So again, I'm going to mark where it started. So it started at 11. So our b value on this one, b is going to be 11 because that's where it started. And our slope. Remember, it's rise over run. So if I start here from 11 to 10, how much does that change? Or think about the last set of notes. Is that a positive slope or a negative slope? Here's my little skateboard dude. So, and he moves from the starting position over. So he's going down the hill. So it's actually down 1 and over, let's count, from 0 to 2. So that's 1, 2. Okay, let's do it again. Went down 1. 1 over 2, and you can keep going down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. So the slope, or rise over run, is it's going down 1 over 2. So then it would be y equals -1/2 x. And it started at a positive 11. So that would be our equation of that one. On the assignment, I believe you will have to type these in. So remember, you would have to hit the negative, which is right next to the 0, and then divided, which is a slash. So it would actually be -1/2, where that slash is next to, or is the question mark button. So if you look, you can see that slash. Okay. Last problem is which graph matches the equation given. So y equals -3x, and then the b is 4. So again, I like starting at the starting point or the initial value. So I'm going to go and make sure which of these ones start at 4. Well, that one doesn't start at 4, so that one is already out. This one starts at 4, so that's good. This one starts at 4, and so that's good. Now notice, this is a negative slope. So so now look at the slope. So if we look, it's going from 4 to 7, so 1, 2, 3. So it went up 3 and over 1. But if you draw your little skateboard guy here, that's a positive slope. He's having to go up, or if you watch the slope tube video, it's puff puff positive. He's having to huff and puff up that hill. This one, if I draw my skateboarder, he's having a good time because look how fast he's going down that hill. he's going down. So that was a negative slope, or if you mark it, it's negative 3 over 1. So negative 3 over 1, which that's what we wanted. So our correct answer would be C. This one is, I should have written that in pink, sorry. Positive slope. And we wanted negative slope, so that's why that one's out. Okay, so hopefully that helped you guys with the equation, and then there will be practice for you to complete.